Hi, and welcome back to the Tiki Talk Show. I'm Ellie,
And I'm Ryley.
and today we are continuing on with the second part of our interview series with Otto and Baby Doe von Stroheim.
Yeah, like Ellie said, this is our first ever two-part series, and we're super excited to bring you the second part. Just to bring you up to speed where we ended up last time, we finished off right about where Tiki Oasis was beginning and Tiki News was ending. So right about in the year 2000 2001 is the time frame that we're picking up this episode in. So last episode we talked about how Otto got into it, how he started Tiki News, how him and Baby Doe met, all the great things that they were doing, like the DJ events, art exhibitions, Exoticon, and this episode we're going to be bringing you a lot more. Like we said, there's going to be Tiki Oasis, but there's going to be a ton more that we talk about as well.
Yeah, like we talked with Baby Doe about her involvement in the burlesque community and Tease-O-Rama, all the way up to museum and art exhibitions they've done, books that they've been a part of and published. There's a lot that goes into this for sure. And we definitely just appreciate them being willing to come on for a second part and share all those stories because, as you can tell, we had enough for 2 and more episodes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we could have talked to them for hours and hours and hours, but we appreciate the time that we did have with them. And thank you, Otto and Baby Doe, for sharing your story with us. But we'll turn it over to them so you can hear it too.
Hi, and welcome back to the Tiki Talk Show. I'm Ellie.
And I'm Ryley.
And welcome back to our second part of our first 2-part interview with Otto and Baby Doe von Stroheim. How are you guys?
Hello.
Good. Hi.
Good.
So we started off, or we kind of ended off our last episode there in 2001, where Tiki News has ended and you're starting all of these other fantastic events. During that, we spoke a lot about how other vintage subcultures are so interwoven with the tiki scene, including lounge and swing, and one in particular is burlesque. So Baby Doe, can you kind of tell us how you got involved in the Tease-O-Rama event there in 2001 and how it's changed over the years?
Absolutely. I'd love to. So I think, when we were talking last time, we talked a lot about the 1990s and how everybody was sort of connecting and finding these things that interested them. And it was a lot of like stuff from the 50s and 60s, from movies to music to just sort of like cocktails. And a big part of that time looking into the past was this whole burlesque history. And in the 1990s, what we saw is that burlesque, as we liked it, which is women wearing pasties and kind of like very old school classic, what we would call classic burlesque now, was a lost art form. It really just was not happening anymore. So there were troupes like the Velvet Hammer in Los Angeles that were starting to recreate this kind of performances. And at the time in the late 90s, I started a dance group that was actually a 60s go-go dance group. We did synchronized go-go dancing. We're called the Devilettes. And so of course we were kind of a little bit lumped in with burlesque because this was sort of like new. Like people were not really doing dance at rock and roll clubs. So now that's sort of commonplace that you might find a rock show with a burlesque dancer. At the time, nobody was doing this at all. And so I joined like a news group, I guess you would call it, a burlesque group. Started to meet all of these different burlesquers that were performing across the globe, which was maybe about 25 people. It was not very many people. And this woman, Allison Fensterstock, was doing an article for Atomic Magazine. And she said, I want to cover everybody who's doing burlesque. And the Devilettes kind of got lumped into that because we were doing something retro. We were doing the PG-13 version of burlesque at the time. And she did this amazing article, and that was in the late 90s. I think it was like 99, 2000. And I started a friendship with Allison. And when we were on this group, everybody's like, we need to host a group event with all of these burlesque performers. And Allison and I just said, let's do it. Let's do it. She said, I live in New Orleans. Let's do it in New Orleans. And I was like, yes, I want to go to New Orleans with the Devilettes. And then, of course, since I'd been already producing shows with Otto with the Tiki stuff, I knew how to produce a large scale event. And so I teamed up with Allison, never met her in person until we did the event in May of 2001. It was huge. It was about 800 people. It was the first ever burlesque convention where we had what we would call neo-burlesque performers. People like Dita Von Teese performed. And we had what we called at the time legends, the vintage vixens of burlesque. So we actually had these women that were burlesque legends in their day. And so we hosted the very, very first ever burlesque convention. I, as an event producer, continued to do that event all the way through 2012. And many people, like the whole scene really changed. I mean, that first event, I was like, we are going to have every single person that does burlesque at this show. And I think we had about 25 performers. So that included
But they came from all over.
and they came from all over. They came from England. They came from everywhere. And that was sort of like the first time that we brought together the new people. Now, that's not to say the first time people were coming together. Like I said, Velvet Hammer was already doing their burlesque shows in Los Angeles. There was a group, the Baba Boom Room, that was doing. There was a group in New York. There was a group in London. So people were doing this.
There were groups in Texas, Atlanta, New Orleans had, I think, the Shim Shamettes that had their own band backing up. So it was pretty well developed.
It was getting there
in major cities
to do a thing. So so that was huge. So I did this like huge festival, and for us, like that was like just like part of like the many things that like Otto and I like. It's like, oh, I like classic burlesque. I'm not a burlesque dancer. I never was a burlesque dancer, but I liked the idea of preserving a style, a vibe, a little bit of history so that the next generations would really learn from it. So, I was teaching go-go dancing from the 1960s style go-go dancing. We had people that came to these events over the years that were actually like the burlesque legends that taught burlesque as well. So actually, that does kind of segue into Tiki and Tiki Oasis because, Otto and I hosting these events in the 90s and eventually for Tiki Oasis, there was always burlesque there because we knew all the burlesque dancers. Like it was pretty, like these are our friends. Like, hey, do you want to come and, dance in a martini glass or, do a little something between the bands? Like that was always like something that we incorporated into our shows.
At that point, was there like overlap between the scene, like were Tiki people outside of yourself or you two into burlesque and burlesque into Tiki? Or were you getting these people who were into burlesque like, do you want to go do this Tiki event? They're like, yeah, but what is Tiki? Or what was that kind of like reception when you kind of approached them with it?
It's funny because I would say, and Otto could speak to this as well, like that being a DJ, like all of this was a crossover, people that were in discovering this stuff from the past, everything from these movies to the costuming to the dance style to the music, like this was all an overlap. So
well, I would say that most burlesque dancers were very aware of Tiki and maybe had some Tiki mugs and, went to Tiki bars, but not all Tiki people were aware of the burlesque scene. But most of them, at least 50%. But coming from the other side, the burlesque dancers were all into vintage stuff. So they all knew about Tiki. So when they were invited to come to a Tiki thing, they thought that was really cool. They wanted to do that.
So when these mostly women at the time now started to, of course, become more all different genders, but at the time it was mostly women trying to recreate these dances from the past. Like, oh, let's do something like Dixie Evans or Tempest Storm. Nobody was saying let's do something like Dita Von Teese because Dita Von Teese was sort of recreating.
She was also doing something vintage.
Right.
So
she wasn't really like established as the thing.
how do you remove your glove? Where do you find feather boas? Like it was like everybody was learning from each other, you know? And so, how do you find music? Can I meet with a DJ that'll play some music for me? So there was a lot of like learning curve that everybody was on. And that was why it was so important to myself and Allison when we first started doing the Tease-O-Rama that we were like, we want to we wanted it to be a woman produced event. We wanted it to be for women by women. And that was really important to us at the time because it was sort of this like burlesque had gone down this like seedy path at some point, and so we were like, no, this is like empowerment. This is all about women. And of course, Burlesque Hall of Fame and other events were happening. It was called Exotic World at the time. And that started to grow in Las Vegas. And then you found festivals all around the world. And there still is festivals all around the world. One of the biggest is in Australia. So they're everywhere, and that scene and how people know about burlesque and how they relate to it is very different now than it was then. But it always was just like this empowerment, like how can we make this about women and empowering women? And I think like when I think about like Tiki Oasis and the crossover and having burlesque dancers at our events, it was really about that. Like, hey, this is like a vibe. Like you wouldn't have gone in the 1950s to a luau and there'd be a burlesque dancer and a surf band wearing, masks or something. Like we were sort of like making it our own. We're putting our own stamp on things.
Mhm. Well, and so speaking of Tiki Oasis, we ended off right at 2001 last time. So now you have you're participating in Tease-O-Rama and we have Tiki Oasis. You talked a little bit about that very first one. Can we talk a little bit more about what those early ones were like? What was it like blending different scenes into things? What were you doing to get the word out? And then maybe some of the unique things, the surprise people that would show up, all that type of stuff about those
The
early
Palm
days.
Springs years. We should call it the Palm Springs years because we
Yeah.
definitely there was like sort of a difference between when we first started in Palm Springs and then eventually moved it to San Diego.
Yeah, and I had already met a lot of the Tiki people. A lot of people that were into Tiki already knew me through the zine. So like, people like Crazy Owl or Bamboo Band, like they already knew. So when Tiki Oasis started, they knew about it, right? So
Yeah.
a lot of the OG people that you see coming in, like, say King Kukulele or somebody, they already knew me. Like I already knew them. So
And we were hosting events already in San Francisco, and like we talked about last time, Otto had done Exoticon and different events in Los Angeles. So, we kind of knew a lot of people. We knew Ape, the
yeah.
band. We knew King Kukulele. We had worked with them before. But the first year of Tiki Oasis was really just, hey, can everybody join us like in the pool at this motel and hope that they don't turn it into like something that's not tiki. Like, let's
Yeah.
just like, can we all band together?
I think it's really important to point out that Tiki Oasis is a weekender, like a rockabilly weekender, like Viva Las Vegas now, but it wasn't that to begin with. It wasn't intended to be that. We never said like we need to create a Tiki weekender.
Yeah.
We didn't say that until about 2 or 3 years into it. So at the beginning, we just said, let's throw a pool party. Let's throw a party at this hotel. And we knew how to throw events, and we
Yeah.
did lots of events which were basically just, a one night thing. We never did a multi-day event before. And so we knew how to bring the elements. We knew how to contact the people. I had a mailing list from Tiki News and an email list from Tiki News. And, we put a postcard out and mailed it
Yeah.
out. That's how we got the word out there.
And I think it's sort of like we threw a fun party, right? And people came and with Pete Maruzzi and Sven and the whole gang was there to make sure that this was like a successful event. And then when we finished that first event, and Casey Jones, who was like the manager, said to like Otto's like, I'm so sorry we didn't sell all the rooms, and maybe this wasn't a success. And he's like, are you kidding me? Like you brought this many people in the summer? Like this never happens here.
Yeah, they
Let's
have
do it
88
again."
rooms, and we booked, I think, less than half of them.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh my God, this is the best
Mhm.
weekend we've had in the summer in decades."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we thought, "Oh, well, okay, I guess we'll do it again." And he was like, "Yes, please come back, do it again."
We sort of saw it as like, oh, we're doing these events, right? We're doing our events in San Francisco. We're doing Tease-O-Rama. I'm doing the doublets. Otto's DJing. He's working on art shows. There's just like, there was a lot of things, and it was just one of
So
many.
yeah, the first one we didn't say we're going to be doing this for 10 years. We didn't
Yeah.
say we're even going to do it again next year. We said we need to go and do a party to save this hotel.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
once
And
we did it,
yeah, and then by
maybe it
the
saved it. Yeah.
second year we added a little bit more. So we were kind of like, oh, the second year, let's add some bands. Let's add we got a friend Chicken John that came down with a busload of people from San Francisco, and we had a little more time to tell people about it. So there was more folks that joined us at that second year.
Yeah, the first year we
Um
had the dive-in movie. Kevin and Jody came with their
Hawaiian
eight
Eye.
millimeter
Yeah.
showing a Hawaiian Eye movie at the
Mhm.
pool on a bed sheet or whatever, or on like a little screen pop-up
Yeah.
screen.
Yeah.
And we had Sven doing a seminar, and then I had curated and then burned onto CD a soundtrack that was played in the hotel, like in the walkways and in the lobby. And that was it. Like that was the entertainment for the whole weekend, and the weekend was 2 days, it
And
was
it
Yeah.
was
Saturday
like
and
a
Sunday.
hundred and million degrees. So like all we wanted to do was just get in that
Oh,
pool in
we
the
also had a
evening.
driving tour. I,
Yeah.
I made a map based on me and Sven collaborated to create a map, and I drew the pictures for it. And then we handed out this map, and
Yeah.
people were supposed to drive around to all these tiki sites. And at the time in Palm Springs, there was about 10, real tiki sites like hotels and condos
Yeah,
and
that's right.
bars.
Mhm.
And even like mid-century sites, like at the time, like that wasn't like there wasn't the mid-century modernism weekend, I don't believe was happening in Palm Springs.
Yeah,
So,
nobody was
just
into
it was
that.
sort of like everybody kind of knew about Palm Springs, like, oh yeah,
Mm.
that's like where people go for have spring break or something.
Mhm.
And but they always wanted to visit because they knew there was a lot of these historic cool places to check out. And at that time in 2001, they were still there, so you could
Mhm.
drive around and see so much. And by 2002, I think we really were like, okay, let's get like a tiki carver, let's have some bands, let's have
We had
um
vendors,
we had our friends mixing cocktails
guest
guest
bartenders who
bartenders.
were
We had
just our friends,
Yeah.
nobody famous.
yeah, nobody was like, I think we were just giving away drinks like in the Reef. I think the
Purple
Reef was
Orchid,
closed.
yeah, the
Yeah.
third year, the Purple Orchid people, David and Rebecca, took over the bar, and that worked a lot
Yeah,
better
yeah, they can
Yeah.
Yeah.
get drinks.
than just our friends.
And, we again, like really, it was very casual. So it was sort of like, hey, buy a ticket to Tiki Oasis, mail a check in the mail, and purchase your ticket for the weekend, and we didn't, I think that 2002, we didn't even have a security guard or anything. By 2003, we were like, maybe we should have somebody working the door. Like, maybe we should figure out like, do we need a wristband or something, And we were just kind of like we knew how to do events. Like we actually like had a lot of experience doing events. So we knew how to do promotions, we knew how to print postcards, we knew how to do this stuff, but we hadn't really thought through like, oh wow, we're sort of taking over this whole hotel and it's a little bit different than a club, and we probably need to have like a couple security guards, and we probably need
Mhm.
like, you know,
So we didn't like we got bands, but we didn't have a stage for the first. Well, the first year we didn't have bands. So but the first 4 years we didn't have a stage. We got a stage in 2005, and we
Mhm.
didn't even have a sound man. Like the band came up and
yeah.
said, "Who's a sound man?" And I'm like, "What's a sound
Yeah.
man?" Like, you guys just get up there and play. Like, just play.
Yeah.
So I learned like, okay, year 4 we got a sound man.
Well, I love like everybody's sort of in it together, right? So we were all just having a great time. And I forget which year our friends decided to get married at Tiki Oasis. I might have been
It was early,
2003 or
yeah, 3 or 4,
4,
yeah.
where it was just like, oh, we want to get married there. Is that okay? And we're like, sure,
And
yeah.
then the local TV station came and they saw them getting married, so their wedding was on the local news that
Yeah.
day.
Oh, that's cool.
And just we had some people selling some items. We kind of kept it somewhat
Yeah,
casual.
we had vendors. So there was like these little huts, and I think they're still there. So there's like 8 huts, like 4 on each side. And I remember the first year we had vendors, we couldn't even fill those huts. Like I was contacting people that had advertised in Tiki News and trying to contact people in LA and say, hey, come out and vend, do a spot out here. And we couldn't even fill 8 slots the first year that we had vending.
Really? Wow. I'm somewhat surprised because even by that point, there's still remaining places out in Palm Spring for tiki stuff that I'm surprised that the hotel wanted to change, or even that at this point it's been, I mean,
Yeah.
you've been doing your luau's for quite some time, and then you had the fanzine, or you had the zine out for a while. That even then people were still like, I don't know about this stuff. Yeah.
It was seen as
Old.
inconsequential, and people thought there was no scene. So even though I had this zine and I said, hey man, I have 300 subscribers, they thought 300 people, that's nothing, right? So I went to Oceanic Arts in 1990, well, in the late 80s, and said, oh man, this is a big deal. And then when it got time to do the zine in 1995, I told them, hey, I'm going to put out a zine, there's going to be a lot of people. And they're like, okay, you let us know when that happens, we'll believe it when we see them coming in. And in 1995, 96, like Oceanic Arts still was saying like, yeah, we sell your zines, like we sell, 10 or 12 of them, but it's not a huge deal. Like I don't see a lot of people. But
Eventually
then
they
later
did.
on, like 99, 2000, like they said, wow, Otto, we see what's happening. All these young people that look like you are coming here and buying stuff and asking us questions and renting stuff.
After Sven's book came out.
After the book of Tiki.
2001.
So 2001, yeah.
That's when it probably became more like commonplace. At least the hipsters were going and like being like, ooh, maybe I should like actually soup up my house with some tiki stuff. And where do I go? Oceanic Arts,
People were gradually finding out. It took 5-6 years.
I think the thing is with us with Tiki Oasis as well is like, again, like what Otto was saying, we didn't set out to do this event. So like things like maybe not having as many vendors or not having like certain things didn't really matter for us because we were just trying to have a good time and throw a good party. And it wasn't like really a thing for a couple of years, like a couple years in, it was like, oh, okay, we're going to come back every summer and do this. And eventually, like, I forget what year we switched to May, but it was brutal. Summers, Palm Springs are brutal. And finally, I was like, gosh, this is really brutal. Like, I think it was after year 2. And he talked to the manager and he's like, is there any other month, like any other time of year we could throw this event?
Yeah. And so Casey said to me, he goes, oh, Mother's Day is the worst day for hotels in Palm Springs because what happens is people who have elderly parents living in Palm Springs, they drive out from LA or Southern California, take their mom out to breakfast or brunch, and then they drive back home. So nobody's staying for the weekend. Nobody's partying on Mother's Day in Palm Springs. So he said, that's the worst day. It's worse than Christmas, New Year's, 4th of July, anything. Like Mother's Day is the worst. And I said, okay, we'll take that date. And so what happened? So 3, 4, 5, we had it in May. And then, when we moved to San Diego, we kept it in May. And people said, oh, well, it's only in May because Otto's mother lives out there in Palm Desert. And so he wants the event to be in May so he can visit his mother. And that's not true. The truth was Casey begged me to use that date because it was the worst day of the year for all hotels in Palm Springs.
It was a bonus for your mom, though.
It was a bonus for me and my mom, but that was secondary, I swear.
Yeah.
And the weather was better, so we got to do it in May, instead of, we got to do it in May and not have a high hotel rate, right? Because when you get in season, which is the winter time in Palm Springs, the hotel rates go up. And even the tropics, having low business, they would also raise their rates, because people from LA would come there during the winter.
Yeah. And I think, it's funny because like when we look back at that time, like it was just, there's a lot of fond memories because we started to realize like, we can continue to do what we're doing in San Francisco, which is like tiki with our kind of like twist to it. So, booking the bands and the DJs, like we were doing things we wanted to do. So 2002 is when we first started booking bands, right?
You mean like at local shows
Yeah,
here?
no, sorry, at the Tiki
Oh, at
Oasis.
Tiki Oasis.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, right.
And,
And we
and then
booked San Francisco bands.
San Francisco
Like,
Yeah.
we had a San Francisco band. We had to
Yeah.
drive down.
Yeah, we had these like great bands, and we had that vibe. Like we were like, we're not gonna just book the Hawaiian band, we're gonna book something that's like our style. And in those early days, it was tiki, what I would call tiki people. So people that liked tiki or knew what tiki was. Like people would come with like their tiki mug, and they would be like, "Hey, I have this mug. Do you know where it came from?" They were like asking me for like the history of their tiki mug or whatever. Or like people
One guy
would,
was wearing his original Tiki Room shirt from the 60s. And even back then, that shirt was worth like $300. It's probably worth $1,000 now.
yeah.
And he's wearing it like by the pool in the sun. And I said, man, get out of the sun. Like, take that shirt off. Like, don't wear that during the day. It might fade. And he was like, oh, it's my shirt. I want to show it off. It's my favorite shirt. And that's just the way things were back then.
Yeah. And then I kind of quickly realized like the audience was like this mix of people. So in San Francisco, it was all like the ultra hipsters, and here there were the ultra hipsters, but there was sort of like collectors, nerds, conservative looking folks. Like it was just like this very big mix of people.
And all levels of life, like, lawyers, business owners, surfers, gardeners, pool cleaners, like all different types of people. There was nothing that separated anybody.
Yeah. And it was just sort of obvious, like, oh, this is a little bit different. Like, we were going to Viva Las Vegas or Las Vegas Grind in Vegas, or we were going to sort of, our San Francisco events or LA events. And it's like, oh, this is kind of different. There's a different kind of people coming here. And they were all in it sort of for the same reason. Like, oh, this vibe, this aloha spirit you got going on. This is what I'm all about, tropical drinks and a pool and great music, and everybody's friendly, and we just sort of started the whole event that way. So even though like there was some challenges, like, oh, maybe we didn't have a security guard at the door checking the tickets, and we didn't have wristbands. Like I had to get, like, one year I got like ribbon and I just put it around people's wrists because I was like, oh, we forgot to buy wristbands, but like,
I mean, imagine if you had a business, like, let's say a movie theater, and the door was just open.
Yeah.
And like nobody checked your ticket. Like people were just walking in,
And we're like,
That's how it was.
Trying to get this together.
The first and second
the
year.
people were, it started to be about community. So there were, room parties that were happening, and like a room crawl with like a little card, like make sure you go to all the rooms, which is a tradition that still sort of continues, or really continues.
Yeah.
That event.
And I want to point out, like, I made a program
Yeah.
for year number 2, and it was 8.5 by 11, folded in half and folded in quarters. So you open it up, and it has everything listed in it. And I tried to list everything, like soundtrack in the hallways from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Room parties and self-guided tour and everything. So it looked like a little mini program. So if you find one of those and you see that, it looks like the event is really happening and really big. But there's literally only like 150 people there.
Yeah.
That's funny.
That was actually one of the things I wanted to ask about real quick. So you said in the first year sold about half the rooms, but the management's still ecstatic about that. As we're moving into a couple of years later, people are hearing about it word of mouth, or it's spreading on Tiki Central. What were the crowds looking like? Were they growing? Was it you said a wider group of people, but kind of what was the turnout?
Well, like the Tiki News zine, it sort of doubled every year. So, the first year was maybe 50 people. The next year was over 100, like maybe 150 people. We did almost sell out the whole hotel, and then the next year we had to get a sister hotel, a partner hotel down the street, and we rented out 20 or 30 rooms there. So we went, 50, 150, 250, 400, and then like 600 people, we had to rent out 2 partner hotels.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, we didn't rent the whole hotel out, like 20 rooms here, 20 rooms there kind of thing. But
yeah, by 2004 and 5, we knew that we had to have the wristbands. And we also
literally by
like,
2005, I was considering blocking off the street behind the hotel and moving the stage out to there so that we could have the whole lawn for all the audience, because there was too many people. Like they couldn't all fit on that little lawn that's at the tropics. If you go there, it's still the same lawn and the same pool area. So you can see how little it is.
Yeah.
And we started to have more of a theme, like that
Yeah.
was sort of early on. I guess it was 2004 with
Oh, 2003.
Three.
Yeah.
Okay, 2003.
And like we had an event
Yeah,
mug in 2003,
yeah.
and the concept of that like just didn't even dawn on us. Like selling an item
Yeah.
didn't even dawn on us. Like having merch, like we didn't even think about that. Like not even a poster or a t-shirt or anything. We didn't
Mhm.
sell anything. We had other vendors there, but
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
Tiki Oasis was we weren't selling anything. And Monk Tiki had come, like I had invited them to be a vendor, when I told you like, hey, we got like
Mhm.
6 vendors. And when we ended
Yeah.
in 2005,
2005.
we were oversold on vendors. Like we sold out. Like we could only
Yeah.
fit 15 vendors, and we probably had about 20. So we had to turn away a few people in 2005, but 15, that was the high watermark. But in
Yeah.
2003, Monk Tiki had come to us earlier and said, like, hey, you guys should have an event mug. You know how like car shows do an event t-shirt
Mhm.
with their logo on it. You should
Yeah.
have an event mug with your logo on it. And I just went, whoa, that's
Yeah, mug
crazy.
tag. That's so
And Monk
cool.
Tiki was huge. They were like there was Tiki Farm and Monk Tiki, right? That's
Mhm.
all that existed in mug makers, and Bosco. But Bosco is
Yeah.
making kind of art pieces, so his mugs were a lot more expensive and small runs. Monk Tiki was doing slightly larger runs of like say 100, and then Tiki Farm was doing larger runs of
Yeah.
like maybe 300 or something. And
Yeah.
so to get a Monk Tiki mug at our event with our logo on it was a huge deal. And then the concept of just having an event mug, that was groundbreaking. And
Yeah.
we owe it all to Monk Tiki,
Yeah.
Miles and Paul.
Yeah. And I remember that was like my job was to sell the mug. It was so stressful because there
You
was
do
like,
it.
50 people in line. And so, we had done merchandise before, obviously, like the Doublettes and Tease-O-Rama. We had t-shirts and we had all of these
Mhm.
goodies, but this was like a higher price item. And, we had to like figure
Yeah, those
out
smaller events
that.
in San
Yeah.
Francisco, we sold Tiki News and we sold pineapple upside down cake. So,
Right.
we had a bank,
Yeah.
we had a
We had
person,
to sort of do this and like how to do inventory. I'm like super organized. So I was like, how do we do
Yeah.
inventory? And, and I would sell the mug until I think they sold out every year. So,
Yeah.
after a couple hours, I'd sit there and then they eventually sell out. And then I'll be like, okay, what are we going to do next year?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like that was such a unique thing to have a tiki mug, and people, they were willing to pay. I mean, it was probably $25 or something for the mug at
Yeah.
the time, but it was sort of like, oh, this is kind of a cool, different thing that we're doing. And then, then like I think Crazy Al or no, Tiki King was like, oh, I'll do a tiki necklace for you.
Yeah.
And all of these folks that were involved in Tiki Oasis are still part of the scene today. There's
Mhm.
Holden from Tiki Farm was like the one that like managed our vending area.
Yeah, we need a vending manager.
And people like Doug Horn were involved and Bosco, and there was a lot of everybody's in it to help each other because everybody wanted to have this fun event. They wanted to have
And Shag was part of it too. Like
yeah.
he would show up and have a shirt release or something, so that it was part of the activities
Yeah.
Mhm.
that Shag would show up and
Yeah.
do a signing of something,
Yeah.
That's cool. So you mentioned the themes. Like, what was behind the decision to go from just this cool poolside tiki party to like making it a different theme every year?
Okay, off the
Yeah.
record,
This is fun.
the underlying impetus for that was for me to be able to book bands that I liked
Yeah.
that weren't lounge or exotica.
Yeah.
So
Like, how can we make that
Yeah.
work?
So year three, I liked this band in LA called Sexu-Roba, and they were a neo lounge band, like Tipsy or some of those electronica
Yeah.
kind of lounge
Yeah.
bands that were out, Pizzicato Five from Japan, that kind of thing. And
Mhm.
so I figured, oh, well, they're in LA, they could drive out. I contacted them. They're like, oh yeah, we'll do it, for like $300 or something. And so they wore like space outfits as part of their normal gimmick. So I said, okay, we're gonna make it Tomorrowland themed. It's gonna be like Disneyland, Tomorrowland, like future, like retro
Yeah.
future. And then we're gonna have them as the headliners. And they didn't go over that well. Like some people didn't like them. They're like, what is this weird music, this
Yeah.
loud and like clubby like dance music or something. Like, oh, what's going on here? But some people got it. They're like, oh, this is funny.
That was, I think, 2003,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So,
And so the mug for that year is a space
Yeah.
needle. It's like a space themed monk tiki mug.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
and then
And we had Derek Yaniger's art, of course. So Derek Yaniger kicked in year 2, and then year 3 started the themes. So
Yeah.
then he did like this cool space art with a girl in a bubble helmet, and a space gun, and
yeah,
Tiki Tomorrowland, I think was the
yeah,
theme.
Tiki Tomorrowland.
And then after that, we're like, oh no, now we got to come up with a theme every year. Now that we did this like space thing, next year's got to be something different. It can't be space and it can't just be Tiki now that we went there, like
Yeah.
now that we did this.
It's fun to
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
kind of do that.
We had, 5 or 10 themes in our back pocket.
Yeah.
People were like, whoa, what are you going to come up with next? How do you, there's nothing else left. You already did, you did monsters or whatever. There's
It's
nothing
funny,
left.
like it often would like correspond to something that was happening in the world, right? So we did this like pirate theme. And that like 2005,
the Johnny Depp movie came out,
and then
right?
the Johnny Depp movie came
Yeah.
out, Pirates of the Caribbean. But like that
We didn't
was,
know that.
like, not part of it at all. And so like when we
And the
look
same
back
thing
at
happened-
those photos and we're like, oh, we're wearing pirate gear, it seems so silly and
Yeah.
ridiculous
It
at this
does.
point. But at the
everybody was
time,
into it.
like everybody was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I would love to wear a pirate outfit. Like it
Yeah.
was not a thing,
So they show up in their normal, like,
Yeah.
tiki gear like this. And then on the Saturday night, everybody's wearing pirate stuff like it's Halloween or something.
So that kind of like cosplay-ish thing.
The
was,
same
like,
thing happened
not-
the spy year.
Yeah.
Both of our spy years, actually.
Yeah.
Huge releases of spy movies. The first year was like this anniversary of James Bond, and we didn't even plan it that way. Like
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
figured out.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew several months in advance because the James Bond advertising started kicking in. But that was our first theme, and then our next theme when we did Spy 2, more international. All these other spy movies
Yeah.
came out. The Tom Cruise one, and then like
Yeah.
Tinker Tailor Spy. All these other spy movies got re-released in the same
We're
year.
just ahead of our times. But I will say that the theme was just very light. It was sort of like the bands were the theme, and maybe people would dress up, and the art was cool theme.
Later on, we
Wasn't
had a
until-
costume contest.
Wasn't until we moved to San Diego that the themes kind of became a thing, So for example, in 2005 or 2005, 6, what year was Magic of Tiki? And then the first year in San Diego, we have Magic of Tiki, and it was because Otto wanted to book this magician. And
Which is
like,
not tiki at
okay.
all, right? Like,
But he did a Tiki act.
yeah. He had like a
his book.
Frank Sinatra rap back and tiki
And
act.
no one was like, no one questioned it. They're just like, okay, whatever. I'm just going to wear my aloha wear and there'll be something. It wasn't until later that people started to go, oh, why do you always have that themes? And do I have to dress like the theme? And it became like a thing. It was like not a thing for like the first 10 years of Tiki Oasis.
Yeah, everybody was all in. Like they were like, "Oh, that's great! I love that thing." I love beatniks. I love monsters. I love hot rods.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like from the what I'm hearing and what I've read about those early days, it just seemed like a very sincere scene. It's just people didn't take themselves that seriously when it came to just having a good time, being around your friend. You all see each other. If this is the only time of year, don't be the guy in the corner too cool to not wear pirates. And
Exactly. Yeah.
And it sounded like in those early days, just people would just be doing events, doing these side things. I think we were talking to King Kukulele a few months ago, and I believe he said that Agent Orange played in a room party in one of those early days, if I remember correctly. So it just sounded like things were just kind of happening as, if I got that right, I might be.
Yeah, Agent Orange played in San Diego, so it was a little bit later on, like 2007 or 8 or something.
The bands in the room started in San Diego, but I agree, like absolutely.
But that level of bands played in the room
Yeah.
parties starting around 2007 on.
But
the Untouchables played in a room party,
And
and then they played on our main stage.
Yeah, we're like, oh, they want to play.
Oh, and Agent Orange too. We're on our main stage, a few years later.
I mean, I do think like those early days were really just sort of discovery, if we look back at it now and it's like, oh, people are just starting to like learn about this thing that it wasn't really defined as tiki per se. It was like a type of style of music, and the Book of Tiki had come out, and there were not other events that were happening around the globe. Like this was it. So if you wanted to have this kind of experience, you maybe could go to Viva Las Vegas, and they might have a tiki pool party, or Las Vegas Grind, something like that. But this was like the one event that this was sort of happening at. And
Hmm.
so when we shifted from Palm Springs and we could no longer do the event in Palm Springs, we moved it to San Diego, and we had to do that minute. That was sort of a last minute thing for us. Like I think we had to do it within like 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
And we were like, I hope people, like, if we build it, will they come? Like, are people going to come to San Diego? We by then established a pretty, good email list or and mailing list, and we had a good reputation of throwing a great party at that point. That we didn't achieve selling out the hotel in 2006 because it was so last minute, but we did get a good number of people to come out and experience the event, and we were like, okay, we're secure. We can like move forward and plan for
And all
future.
the Southern California and San
Yeah,
Diego people like really dove
yeah,
in, people
yeah,
that had been thinking like, I'd like to make that drive out to
yeah,
Palm Springs, but it's, an hour and a half or 2 hours or more.
yeah,
Mhm.
They all like really jumped in when we moved to San Diego.
yeah.
Hmm.
Right. So when you did move to San Diego away from Palm Springs, kind of what was the driving force behind that? And then you landed in the beautiful Hanalei Hotel. Like what drew you to that in particular?
Yeah.
So the main reason why we left Palm Springs was because the hotel was just too small. Like I had said, like,
Hmm.
oh, we might have to like block off the street in the back and get a permit from the city or something, or we might have to like, really secure the other hotel and have events over there and split the audience or something. An 88 room hotel is just not big enough for 500 people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was the
Yeah.
main reason.
And they
Uh,
also were having a hard time keeping us on that date. Like they thought, oh, you guys are pretty successful. Maybe you should just do the event in June or July because that would be better
There
for
was
them.
new owners and new management at the hotel too. So
Yeah.
Casey was still there, but some other new owners were involved and wanted to change things. So
And
we
and we just were kind of like, no, we don't want to change the date. Like our date is May. Like we want to do it on this time. And so we just felt like we weren't necessarily supported. And like Otto said, we were ready to kind of grow.
Mhm.
Um, and it was pretty like we knew about San Diego. We had
we had
gone.
always known about the Hanalei.
Yeah, we had.
Like I have known about it in the late 80s, and there,
Yeah.
there was DJs down there that were having DJ nights. Brendan Powers, from Las Vegas, was one of them, and James Call, who had a lounge magazine. Those guys were
Yeah.
having DJ nights at the Hanalei Hotel in the late 80s, early 90s,
And
mid
Sven took us
90s.
on a little exhibition there, a little adventure, and we walked all around and we're like, oh my God, these grounds are
Yeah,
amazing.
so that would have been
And
96, I think, that the tour, Sven's
yeah,
tour,
yeah. And then 96, 97 around that
maybe
time.
97. Yeah. So
And
we already knew about it.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And we had a friend that was down there and said, I'm friends with the manager at the Hanalei. Like, I'll introduce you. And so when we were like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? Like, I don't even think you flew down there. I think you just talked to him on the phone and said, hey, can we throw this event? And he said, oh yeah, I have this like event pavilion out in our parking lot. You could take over the pavilion for a day.
And they
And
couldn't give us the whole hotel
yeah,
because they were, what, 420 rooms or something?
420 rooms.
And
And
we
we
were
were
coming
like,
from 88 rooms. And I told them, I want the whole hotel. And they're like, well, first of all, we have some bookings. Second of all, you're not big enough. And I said, well, I have 88 rooms here and, 20 over there and 20 over there. I think I'm big enough. I think I could do the whole
yeah.
hotel. And they're like, no, we'll give you half the hotel.
And good thing we didn't because
Yeah, yeah.
we were quite
But
ready
we
for
did sell those rooms. We sold our whole block, like
and we did
almost.
the
No, we sold like 90%
yeah.
of our.
And then
So we didn't even sell out 200
we
rooms.
did the Bali High on Friday night. So, we reached out to them, hey, can we do a little something in your back patio on Friday? And do this event all Saturday, and we had a Carver's Village. Like we just had more space to do a little bit more stuff. So even though we were like out in the parking lot, we made the best of it. We had a great tiki carving village. We had vendors, we had bands, we had DJs, and there was a pool, but it was cold.
Because it was May. We
Oh.
Oh,
based the
yeah.
weather on Palm Springs.
was like
San
people were
Diego's
like,
got a May gray for sure.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I came with my bathing suit and my sun hats and everything, and it's freezing. You can
And
go in the pool. It's
that did put
stopped
a
and thaw.
damper
So it was just like a little
on
bit like
it.
people were like, "Oh, is it always going to be in May?" You know, like, and so same thing. We went to the hotel and we said, "Okay, that worked out well. Next year we actually do want to take over the entire hotel, and but we need to have better weather, you know." And that's the
Mhm.
tough part when you're talking with hotels. They have it in season, and they're like, "Well, we can't give you any of our dates in the summer because the summer is our in season. This is when we book all of our rooms." And then I think Otto, you asked them, "Well, what's your worst weekend in
Well,
the
what's the
summer?"
shoulder date? Like,
Yeah.
when does it drop off? And they
Yeah.
said, oh, well, when school starts, then it drops
Or yeah.
off, So so we're able to
Third
get,
weekend of August is when we
yeah,
started.
like end of summer, which
Yeah.
was still good weather there,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
It's really the best weather.
and unbeknownst to us, like, oh, that school thing, like, we didn't think about that. That kind of did affect us a little bit.
Actually,
Uh,
then, we were always the third weekend August for a few years with great weather, and we didn't have a lot of people that were going to school, like they didn't have kids necessarily.
that's yeah.
They weren't, in college or things like that. It's just like it didn't really affect us until later. But when, 2007, 8, that was very scary times for us because, we're signing up for this huge hotel, like signing our lives away, right? Like, yes, we're going to book all of those rooms, and just hoping like, oh gosh, I hope this works out,
Well, really, I
and
think it was just kind of that first year. Like, 2005, we had half the hotel and we came close. And then the next year, again, and the first year I said, hey, I want the hotel. They said no. The second year I said, hey, I want the hotel. And they're like, well, you could do that, but you have to put up a bond of this amount of money to secure that. And if you fall short, you have to buy the rest of the rooms. And I'm like, no problem. Yeah, yeah, I got the money, and I didn't have the money. They said, okay, if you sign that contract, that means that you have that money, and if you fall short, you're going to pay it. I'm like, yep, got it. Signing the
you
contract,
did have a credit
and I
card.
didn't have the money. Yeah, I figured, well, I could if I cashed out my 401k and then like put some money on a credit card, I could make it. And I could do it. I could make it happen. But I definitely didn't have like the money that they said I had to have, and we fell short. Like again, we went from like 200 rooms to like the 420, but we only did like 90%. And so we had a come to Jesus moment with the hotel, and we sat down with them, and I said, I think I can do better next year. I'm we did so much, like we went from 200 to 400, and can you guys let me slide? Okay, what do you guys think? And they were like, well, yeah, we think you did a great job, just like in Palm Springs, right? And what I didn't know at that moment was their GM was formerly a food and beverage manager.
Yeah.
So his bottom line, like he was always looking at the food and beverage, trying to say, like, how can we get people to buy our food? How can we get people to buy our drink? And what I didn't realize at the time is that our audience had emptied their bar. They had to like restock all of our weekend, like because they had never seen anything like this before. They had groups, but they weren't drinking groups. They were like
Yeah.
teachers union or
Mhm.
firefighters union or
Yeah.
rodeo or something.
Yeah.
And so when our people came in and drank like $100,000 worth of beverages, they were like,
Yeah.
"We want these guys back. We'll let them slide on those rooms
Yeah.
one time.
And I think like the other thing too is that our event, like people stayed. I mean, we didn't even realize it until they're like, nobody left. Like nobody, like normally you go to
Yeah.
SeaWorld or do other things, but your people just stay
Right,
for 2 or 3
which is a different
days.
model for these hotels.
They were like, this is kind of cool that everybody's here. And like, man, maybe we better figure out like how to have like some pop-up like coffee or food or, pick up burgers or things like that because like you have a lot of people here. And like that difference between those events were sort of incremental. Like when we look back at photos, it's like, oh, there weren't as many people there. There also was a lot of changes that were happening at the hotel. So when we did our first event there in 2006, we were out at that pavilion, like we were talking about in the parking lot. By 2007, they had built their indoor area, and we had already done seminars with Tease-O-Rama and other events of ours, but we were like, finally, we can like expand and start doing seminars, which was this whole other world for us that was so fun to explore. We could have Jeff Beachbum Berry do a seminar, or somebody like Martin Cade, or just historians talking about historic preservation, which was really important to us. Or, just that was sort of like, oh, wow, we can like really kind of do this the way that we want to do it,
Well, in Palm Springs, we always had Sven do a slideshow.
Yeah.
But it was around the pool, and it was kind of disruptive because people were also in the pool and people were still partying, because it was at night. And so it didn't go over so well all the time, It was a little bit disruptive. It wasn't a movie or a band, So Sven, had a rough time like overcoming the audience
I know.
and trying to give his academic seminar,
And our thing, like once we got to the bigger space, was like, oh, we're gonna fill this up. So tons of bands, tons of DJs,
tons of vendors.
Put
a car show in the park.
Eventually the car show and the art show followed suit. Like, we can have a fashion show. We can, the themes, we can really explore the themes. And so it wasn't until 2010, which was we considered our 10-year anniversary, our 10th event, I guess, that we were kind of like, oh, like we added an art show. We were just adding more things. And I remember at that point, like turning to Otto and just being like, do you think we'll do this like another 10 years? Like, do you think this will continue? And he's just like, I think I have it in me for another 10 years. And I was like, yeah, I think I do too. Like,
we thought at that time, like 10, that was kind of the plateau. Like I thought, it might drop off a little bit. People might stop being interested in tiki stuff, but we still have our core audience, and I think we could still rent out this hotel for maybe another 10 years, like we could keep it at this level. It probably won't grow, but it would definitely continue because the people that were into it were so into it. And I could see that the people that came to Tiki Oasis, they weren't going to change their lifestyle. They weren't going to say, I'm not into that anymore.
Yeah.
Which you get with people when they're, when they're going from like their 20s to their 30s to their 40s, they might change. They might be into, off-road.
Something else, yeah.
Cars or something, and then they change to, paddleboarding or something.
Family or something,
Yeah, people change their interests, but I could see that these tiki people were not going to change. They were always going to be into this. Like they might have other outside interests, but they were always still going to be into tiki.
And us too. Like that was like we liked this.
Yeah, we knew that.
And with like exploring these different themes as well, like we got to have fun with it too. We got to book the band we wanted to. We got to come up with the outfits, all of that. And I would say we are terrible entrepreneurs. Like we were like not making any money, you guys. Like this was like a break-even situation for a very, very long time. Because we didn't set out to make this like our job. Like we both had full-time jobs. We had our first son in 2002, our second in 2005. We had 2 kids. We were just sort of like doing this as our summer vacation, our fun time. And we're like, if we could break even, like we're pretty happy, So it was sort of like our intentions were all about bring people together, joyful, fun, just have a good time and to get to like our creative expression of doing whatever we wanted to do, like, the bands and so on that we wanted to book the seminars and everything.
Well, whatever money we made, we had to put back into the event. So like if we made money, we would say, oh, next year we can get that band from New York. We're going to have to pay them twice as much as the band from LA.
Yeah.
But, we need some money. So we're just going to put it right back into the event. Right. So at the end of the year, we still hadn't made any money, even though we made some money, So we didn't make money for, I don't know, 8 or 9 years.
Yeah. We never bought one thing for ourselves except for maybe, a cute outfit or something.
The vendors. I think we couldn't even go shopping.
Just like, but we wanted it to continue. So we were like, let's take that money and put it back in and just kind of fill it. And luckily we were able to do that. And I always find it interesting, people are like, oh, event producing, it's so great. Like, I'm going to produce these events. And I'm just like, go for it. Yeah. But, just know that that's like, for that to be your full-time job, like that's going to be, you're going to rely a lot on maybe sponsors or other things to make that happen.
Yeah.
And it's hard to make money. You got to do it incrementally, but it's easy to lose money.
Great at losing money.
We don't plan on it, but I mean, you could just overpromise. You could
Yeah.
hire some band that costs a lot of money and you think you're going to hit the ticket sales, but you fall a little short,
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like at the core of it, you two were making an event that you wanted to be at. As weird as that sounds, it sounds like
Yeah.
you said, you're booking the bands, you're having the vendors, and you're all the same people are coming out time and time again. And so we're asking you questions as the Tiki Oasis event organizers right now. But if I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have any moments throughout Tiki Oasis history as Tiki Oasis guests that really stand out as some favorite ones, memorable, wacky things, whatever it could be, from the last 25 years of Tiki Oasis that you'd like to share?
Ooh,
Sure.
like our
Yeah.
favorite memories of Tiki.
Favorite memories, yeah.
Yeah.
We used to go to the room parties. We used to try to go to all the room parties. So room
Yeah.
parties were pretty fun. And our kids grew up at Tiki Oasis. So during the day, we would have to kind of take turns taking care of the kids. So that was kind of fun. Like sometimes you might take them vending, to the vendors or in the pool with, 500 other people in the pool and have a squirt gun fight or something, or throw them into the pool on top of somebody else's toy or something. Uh, but I think one of the cool things the Crown Plaza years was meeting famous people that came and were just guests. So like, we didn't pay them. Like obviously we booked people to play on stage, like Jerry Casale from Devo and people like that were on stage. They were paid to be there. But like say Kate Flannery from The Office just showed up and I was like, oh, hey, nice to meet you. Welcome. So here's what we do at Tiki Oasis. She goes, yeah, I know. I've been coming for a few years, and I was like, whoa, really? Like, that's so cool. I didn't know that.
I don't
Or,
mean to interrupt, but it's funny because we've ran into her before
Yeah.
at Exoticon in LA in
yeah.
2023, and
Yes,
then it seems like everyone has a story with her from like different spots. I'm like, huh, I didn't realize she was as into this.
yeah.
Yeah, she's just
She
cool
performs
and
at
hanging out.
places that
Yeah.
are
Well, we
yeah.
later had her perform with her band, The Lampshades, with Scott,
Yeah.
Scott Robinson, and they were great. We love
Yeah.
them. We had to perform a lot, like maybe 4 or 5 times. And then a couple other of those, like David J. from Bauhaus was a big, or is a big Blue Hawaiians fan. So when they headlined, uh, I was in the audience and I saw them. I start talking to them, and they're like, "Oh, hey, this is our friend David J. from Bauhaus." And I was like, "Oh, it's so nice to meet you. I love your band." And I didn't get my picture taken with them. So
Oh.
like, 2006 or seven, whatever that was, or 7 or 8,
Yeah.
I don't have my picture with David J. And another year, Exene was there, and like
From
somebody
X,
told
yeah.
me that Exene, the singer from X, was there, and I'm a big fan of her band X. And they're like, "Oh, she's over there," and I'm like, "Oh, can you introduce me?" They're like, "Yeah, yeah, come on." And so I went and I met her, and she was just with some friend, and just started talking to her, and she said, we're kind of then just hanging out. Like it gets a little awkward, like you've said, like, "Oh, I love your band," and then what do you say next? So I'm standing there. She's like, "Hey, you guys have a really good event. You know how I can tell that you have a good event?" I'm like, "No, how?" And she goes, "Because people aren't like this on their phones at your event." And I was like, "Oh, thanks, man. Thanks, Exene. That's a
Yeah.
big compliment. I appreciate that."
Yeah. It's funny because I have so many memories. I can't really like zero in on just like which ones were necessarily the best. I mean, I feel really thankful that we've been able to book so many bands that we are fans of,
Yeah.
Southern Culture on the Skids, the 5, 6, 7, 8s, meeting Josie Cotton. We booked her, she was like my teen idol. Having just like fun, weird things that people will do, like, oh, we're gonna have a caftan meetup in the pool. Everybody jump into the pool wearing your caftan, like just ridiculousness, like people, like a lot of like just fun, like you wander through the event and it's like, oh, somebody's getting body painted by an artist, with like a
Mhm.
tiki on them, or just the sheer amount of artists that have been part of it, curating the art show. And we've had hundreds of artists that have been part of that show. And just seeing people bring parts of them to the event that just makes me really happy, like that just makes me feel like we've had a good experience. Sometimes as producers we don't always get to experience the event. Like every single seminar, I want to go to every single seminar. We book these seminars, we talk to the seminar hosts, we work it out with them, like what they're going to talk about, and then we don't get to go to the seminar. So
one year, Baby Doe said, I said, oh, I want to go to seminars. So she was like, oh, well, you could introduce the seminar and then you could go to it. So we said, okay, I'm going to introduce it. And we didn't plan it very well because then I had to introduce like another seminar like 30 minutes later. And then the same thing happened the next day. Like I would introduce the seminar, I'd be sitting there and then I'd have to leave, So we figured that out.
Yeah. And it's sort of like it's so meaningful for other people. So people will come up to us and say, like, oh, I met my best friend at Tiki Oasis, like in line for a cocktail, or I met my future husband, or I was engaged at Tiki Oasis, or it was we've had people that it's their dying wish, like honestly, like this was their final, like I want to come to Tiki Oasis one more time,
So we've had people bring babies that are less than 1 year old.
Yeah, 3 months.
Which is actually kind of dangerous,
We brought our baby when he was 4 months old, but it's sort of like it's very like it means something to people, and I guess I just want to say that like we kind of knew that all along. So always like when we were like you said, oh, you guys were kind of creating an event you would like to create, and it's like, well, we wanted to create something that we like with hopes that future people would want to come, future generations would come. And so, for us, like having like, I came across a video recently that was from 2013, where Otto and I were interviewed, and we were talking about Tiki Oasis is kid friendly. And it's funny because I was like, oh, I remember like there was this whole thing about Tiki Oasis, like do not bring your kids to Tiki Oasis, but we had kids. We're like, well, we have kids, like it is kid friendly. I mean, it's definitely at times not, but it definitely is, And so we were talking about that, and those kids that did come to Tiki Oasis in those early days, now they're adults and they're bringing their friends or maybe even their families. I don't know, maybe they're at that point. When you've been around for 25 years, you start to like, it just morphs into something that's so like beyond like what we can even fathom.
Yeah. And so what was the decision behind then kind of splitting Tiki Oasis into a second event then with Arizona Tiki Oasis?
Ooh, yeah, that's a good question.
I'll tell my backstory and then you take it.
Okay.
So
a two-parter.
The Hotel Valley Ho had opened in, I think, 2007, and they had a Trader Vic's. So we knew about it, and we had always wanted to go, but we couldn't because we had kids and we had to get them to school, and then we had this event in August, and we could never get out there. We could never like book a vacation,
Just
like Tiki Oasis San Diego was our vacation, and then our kids, had their vacations or school or whatever. And so we never made it out there. And somebody from out there, I forget what her name was, but she said, oh, you guys should come out here and do an event. And so we had that thought, or I had that thought at least, of doing that. But it just we were never able to make it happen. We never came to fruition. Yeah. And we were struggling so much to keep the San Diego event growing and keep it going. And we also had our day jobs, so we were doing San Diego Tiki Oasis in our spare time. And it was just too much. We could never get the spare time and the spare energy to be able to get out there and launch a second event remotely like that,
Yeah. And for me, like so for us, like Otto said, we had our day jobs. I was hosting Tease-O-Rama, and I had my dance group, the Doublettes, and Otto was doing his DJing. So our lives were pretty full, right? And so when I stopped doing Tease-O-Rama in 2012, it sort of opened us up to like, hey, maybe I could spend a little bit more time on Tiki Oasis. And so then we could add like a car show, and like Otto would always come up with a fun idea, like, let's do a car show. Let's do a Miss Tiki Oasis contest. And then I would make it happen because I'm the organizer, I was like, oh, let me get the spreadsheet going. But, we just kept building it. And then I was working at a design firm that I left in 2018. And after being there for 17 years, and I was like, what could I do? Like, maybe I'll start my own little company. And I was looking at some different things I was considering doing that was like my, career path. And I'm like, none of those things make me I'm not that passionate about those things. I'm not really that into those things. And I had committed to take a few months off. And I was really loving hanging out with my teenagers at the time. And I was like, man, without this crazy day job, like I get to actually hang out with the teenagers and they're talking to me and stuff. Like this is kind of cool. Like, maybe I don't want to just jump into something. And so I just, is there a possibility that maybe we could just add another event? Like maybe I could just focus on adding something at Otto's like Scottsdale, Arizona. Let's go. Like this is going to be perfect. It's a historic hotel. We love historic preservation. We wanted to do something different, so we decided to switch it to springtime and more of a 21 and over event, like just a different vibe. And that's what happened. That's why we were able to do it, is
We took
because
a family vacation out there
yeah,
to check it out.
yeah.
So we
And
dragged our young
nice.
teenagers out there
Yeah.
in the summertime because they're off school.
The hotel just like, oh my, we know about Tiki Oasis. We're so happy you're here. And they've been just such a great partner. They're really our friends. Like they're just like, we love you guys. We want to work with you. And they've been really great creative partners as well. And so we get to do something a little bit different than our San Diego event. It's a little bit smaller, a little more curated. It's definitely more mid-century modern, focused and more adult oriented than the San Diego one. In terms of that event, it's a 21 and over event. And yeah,
I
we
mean,
just like
kids are allowed
kids are
there.
allowed.
There's
Yeah,
just not
just
a
for the
lot
day.
for them to do.
Only for
Mhm.
the day. And then so we've been doing that since 2019. And of course, 2020, not such a great year. We had to cancel our event just 5 weeks before, um, and that year.
The
But
Arizona event.
Arizona,
Mhm.
and eventually we had to cancel the San Diego event as well in 2020. We switched to all online, like somehow we powered through it, and I taught myself how to do all
We
of
got
that
a
stuff.
Twitch account where you
Yeah,
guys
we were
subscribe
just
to Twitch,
let's make this happen.
started streaming.
And that hotel, the Hotel Valley Ho, was so supportive of us, and they were just like, you know what? We don't care. Like whenever you're back, you're back. Like let's make it happen. And so that was tough, like starting a new connection, a new business with somebody, and just not knowing like this could be the demise of this. Like we did the first year was okay. You count on the second year being your good year.
Yeah,
And our
Right.
second year was 2021, which was actually like a masked event. Like you
yeah.
still, CDC, you still had to wear your masks, although everybody was vaccinated by that time.
They worked great, but
And it was,
we had to limit, like we couldn't sell
yeah,
outside tickets.
yeah.
So the event had to be smaller. So again, like we
So
barely
we had to
made
sort
the
of
event happen.
pitch and like make
Mhm.
that happen. And we, of course, we were following all the protocols and, everything that we needed to do to make sure the event was safe and that we were doing the correct thing. But every month was sort of different. Every week was sort of different. So that hotel really stuck with us all throughout 2020. And that has created such a solid relationship with them. And it's a beautiful hotel. It's gorgeous. And it's like a 5 diamond hotel. And it's the jewel of Scottsdale, Arizona.
And it's the jewel
Yeah,
of architecture preservation
yeah,
because it's the most highest level of preservation, like legally that you can get.
yeah.
They adhere to very strict preservation rules.
Oh,
And in
So
fact,
it's intact.
yeah,
It literally
yeah.
looks like 1956 on the outside.
And
that's
in fact, for that
incredible.
event, we partner up with a nonprofit, which is Arizona Preservation Foundation. So they're our partner for the event. We are raising money for this great organization that's doing wonderful work in Arizona. So, you know, um, that's been going well, and we'll be there, I'm sure, for many years to come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and so we're talking about Tiki Oasis and all these events, and we're hearing about the music and the culture. I want to take a quick moment back. This was something I was very curious about. So we've mentioned the art shows at Tiki Oasis, how that's played a very big role.
Mhm.
But your hosted art shows are not the only place or you're not just going to find them at Tiki Oasis. I want to jump back to the Tiki Art Now series from
Uh,
2007. I know we're going way back. I know we were just at 2019. Now we're
Take
back
it.
in 2000, started in 2007, I believe, or was that the last one? No,
That was the
we
last
started,
one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
right. But
I
would you mind
think
telling us a little bit about,
three or
okay.
four, 2003 or four. We might have skipped one year in between there. So there's three of them.
Hmm.
And I had from working with Tiki News, I had relationships with lots of artists, and at the end, I was receiving more than I could publish in my zine. More artists were contacting me than I could fit into each issue. So um, that started with having artwork on both sides of the cover. So after like the second year, I would have two covers, a back cover artist and a front cover artist. And then I had to put out a full artist issue, which I think is number 13 with
Mm.
Bosco on the cover, just to get, just to get these artists' names in there, just to acknowledge like, hey, all these creative people have sent me all this stuff. I can't write a full article on everybody every issue because, I'd have to put out 50 issues. So then after Tiki News ended, I had always done little gallery shows also for each issue. So I wanted to do a bigger gallery show, and I had done one in at Lelou's in 1995, and it came out in '96. But I had already moved to San Francisco, so if you look at the documentation of that, it says it's curated by somebody else, but it was actually curated by me. I might be a co-curator or something, but I think it was the credit for curation was given to the current gallery curator in 1996 because I had moved away in September and the event happened in October, I think.
They probably
So
dealt with the contracts and stuff, but you booked them.
yeah, I booked. Well, I booked most of the artists, and then
Yeah.
they, against my wishes, booked a bunch more artists into it. So I had, slots for like, let's say 40 artists, and then they booked another 20 or 30 artists into the show and like really filled up the space and crammed it full of art. But anyways, that was like the first Tiki art exhibit ever.
Yeah.
So the first exhibit in a proper gallery dedicated only to Tiki
95,
art
yeah.
in October of '96.
Yeah. You had done a shag one and you had done some
Yeah, I'd done the
smaller.
little gallery ones in the coffee houses and at Beyond Baroque and these other
So,
spaces, but
yeah.
those were temporary.
And what's funny, again, like we talked about earlier, these things just organically happen, right? So Otto's living in San Francisco. We meet a guy who owns a gallery, and he's like, "Hey, you did that tiki art show. That was
Yeah.
pretty cool. Like, can you do that here in San Francisco?" And by then, Otto's like, "Of course. Like, I've got a long list of people that could be in the art show." And then I also met this publisher that said they're willing to like publish like a catalog. So like, let's do a catalog.
Well, the
too.
publisher,
So,
Last Gasp, they were pretty big in San Francisco,
Yeah.
really big in San Francisco, I should say. They were releasing Robert Williams, all of Robert Williams' books that got published.
Yeah.
And they had contacted me and said, "Hey, you're doing these zines. We would put out a book that would be, a compilation of your zines."
Yeah.
And so I always had that in my mind, and I had that relationship with them. And they would come to our events, and I would see them at other events, zine events, or art gallery openings, or whatever. I want to point out they weren't the first one to approach me to put out an anthology. Amok Books in Los Angeles, run by Stuart Sweezy, had offered me that right away. Like after I put out, 6 issues, he's like, "Hey, if you ever want to put out an anthology, we'll put out a book." So I had that in my mind. So when it came time to do another art show, a gallery show with all these artists that I knew, Shag and Don Frazier, Tiki Tony, Crazy Al, all these people, I thought, okay, I want to document it. I want to put out a catalog in conjunction with the show. So that first show, we had to work on it for a couple of years because we had to get the catalog all together and then the show, So we had the first catalog published by Last Gasp and then the show.
And so you did 2 of those or 3 of those? I can't remember now.
Well, we did 2 at that location
Yeah.
at it was called the Shooting Gallery, little play on words, in the Tenderloin in San Francisco. And then we did the third one at Rock LaRue in Seattle. And then each of the catalogs is published by a different publisher.
Yeah.
So the first one is published by Last Gasp, and they own all the rights to it, and they've reprinted it a lot, like, I don't know, maybe 5 times more. So like that, the Tiki Art Now is out there, and you can buy it used for like $3 somewhere, And then the next one was Tiki Art 2, and Derek Yaniger did the cover art for that, and that was published by the gallery.
Yeah.
And then that they only published about 3 or 4 of their own catalogs and then went out of business. So Tiki Art 2 is gone and will never be republished, as far as I know. And then Tiki Art 3 was published by Dan Vado, Slave Labor Graphics in San Jose. And he also like kind of went out of business. He stopped publishing books, and then he had an art gallery for a long time, and it was called Art Boutique, and they threw shows there also. And then that just closed. So I'm pretty sure that third book will never be republished either. So
And then Lelou's contacted you to do the like, was it the 15th or 20th anniversary? I don't
It
know.
was supposed to be, I think
Maybe
it was
it's
supposed to be the 20th anniversary, but it ended up maybe being the 21st anniversary or something like that.
2016.
Yeah, so we did a 20th anniversary
Yeah.
of the 1996 show, which I forget the name of that. I forget what it was called.
That's not Tiki Art Now?
No, that's
Did
not
the
Tiki Art
book.
Now.
Yeah, you did the book with
And
Sven.
then the Art of
Yeah,
Tiki
Art of Tiki.
book
Sorry.
came out,
Yeah.
which wasn't intentional. So I had approached Lalouz and said, I want to do this 20th anniversary and I want to put out a catalog with it. And they had also said, oh, we've been thinking about that too. Let's do it. That's great. But in the meantime, Sven had approached Lalouz Gallery because they have a book imprint. And he said, hey, my next book is going to be The Art of Tiki. And you guys should do it because you're all about
Right.
art and art galleries, and you've thrown all these shag exhibits and everything. And Lalouz said to him, yes, let's do it. And then at the end, Lalouz put us together with Jordan Reichek, who also had his collection. He said, hey, I want to sell my collection in a gallery show and I want to put out a catalog. So it ended up the Art of Tiki book is actually three separate books put together. It's like two catalogs plus Sven's book put together. And so people don't really know that. And they look at the book and they think like, huh, this Jordan guy put this stuff in here and this Otto guy put all this new art in here. It doesn't fit really well, you know.
Yeah,
The book seems a little weird.
To be a little bit different than maybe what you had envisioned.
Yeah, much different than my vision, but
Yeah.
but it all actually came together. And in the end, I think it was great that you know, you get more people together working on something and you create something that's better. The sum of the parts is better, you know, better than the whole is better than the sum of the parts. And that book is the most successful book for the Lalouz Gallery and all the books that they've put out. I don't know, maybe 20 books. It's by far the biggest selling book, The Art of Tiki. So that also is in like its fifth pressing or something.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And you know, it's what's great is that we've had such an amazing connection to all of these artists, right? So in 2010, I worked with Keep Abreast Foundation, and they do busts of women, and they have artists paint the busts. So that was the first Tiki Oasis art show that we did, was with Keep Abreast Foundation, and we had, I think, maybe 30 artists that were part of that.
That was a fundraiser. They're a nonprofit.
Them, and so that was our first time doing an event, an art show at Tiki Oasis, and then just kind of continued from there. And the next year we did a Black Velvet art show, and we've been hosting art shows since then, and it's been really fun to like curate that. And we typically have 40 to 60 artists in each show, so that's a lot of art.
And how much do we sell of the art? Like, what's the
Well, now pretty much most of the art does sell. So, you know, it's pretty popular. Like, people go, they like it. We always have a
which is crazy because if a small gallery had a group show, they would be super happy to sell 50% of their art.
Yeah. And we only have it up during the weekend.
We sell like 75% of the art.
And we have an art show at Arizona Tiki Oasis. You know, we've had it at all of our events. Like, it's just something that we love to explore. We love to just see the creativity. We don't tell people what to do for their art, you know, like, who knows what they're going to do.
We
But we
give them a tagline,
you know. Theme,
Yeah,
and I always have like some kind of crazy theme I come up with, and I throw it out there and see what people come up with. And you were asking about Tiki Dreams, our exhibition that we did in Northern California. And we will tell you the whole story, but I think like part of
no, not the whole story.
The whole story, right? Sure. But part of doing this exhibition is Otto and I were like, we have collectively curated so many art shows, like throwing together an exhibition. Like, we know how to do this. We know how to do parties. We know how to do art shows. Like, we got this.
We know everything.
Well, we knew we didn't know it all, but we felt pretty confident like going into it. And so we had about a year to plan for the Tiki Dreams exhibition that was up in 2023. It was supposed to be up for 6 months. It was up for 10 months. It was at a very well-established museum in Northern California in Yountville called the Napa Valley Museum. We had no idea that we were going to be able to take over an entire huge museum with our exhibition. We sort of wanted to do something that was Well, what had happened,
They came to us, by
they
the
came
way.
to us because we
Oh.
got referred to them actually from our friend Caitlin Moneypenny that works for the Disney Family Museum. And she said, "Hey, they're hosting a tiki exhibit at the Napa Valley Museum." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And she's like, "I think that they might need your help." So she introduced us to the director, and the director said, "Hey, we had this concept, we promoted it and everything, and then it sort of didn't turn out the way that we wanted. We didn't quite have the right connection." And I was like, "Oh, we could do it, but we need like a year to plan this. Like we can't throw this together." So she was like, "Of course, absolutely." She gave us a year to plan for it, and we knew we wanted to do something that was about Northern California tiki. That was our whole plan. I think we even wanted to call it like NorCal Tiki.
Yeah, we wanted to really emphasize that.
We
Have it
wanted
in
it
the
to
name,
only be about Northern California.
And she said, no, it has to
Yeah.
cover all, like the history of tiki. Yeah, yeah. And we're like,
Wow.
hmm. And then she also said,
It
and
has
it,
to
it
have
very
Tiki Oasis.
has to have a military element. Like you got to include the Pacific Theater. It absolutely has to include that because we are on military property. We're on a VA hospital property. And so
Yeah.
I can't leave that out. That's got to be,
And
a feature.
also it has to include it has to have new art, and it has to have tiki.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
So
we would have just done
like
vintage, Tonga room, Trader Vic's.
just like Tiki Bob and
Yeah.
and do all the NorCal stuff because
Because there's so much
there's so
and
much.
people
Yeah.
don't know about some
Yeah.
of it.
So we kind of like I think that threw us off a little bit, because we were like, we're down this path and now we have to like do all of this. So I don't even know how we did it, you guys. Like we threw that together. We did actually include the history of tiki, of Polynesian pop tiki, the I guess the 30s through
That was kind of the
the
hardest part.
60s. That was a
Like, how do you do
part,
that
yeah.
in, one room? Like,
Mhm.
And we were very, very, very lucky that Eve Bergeron from Trader Vic's worked with us, as she curated her whole room, which was like the Trader Vic's room. And we had artists that were local, Woody Miller, and showcased some artists from the past as well. And we really brought to life what we could. And also included some new art, as well as a whole like kind of half room about Tiki Oasis. And what was so fun about that exhibition was that when we would be in there, like always trying to fix it, because like, oh my gosh, there were so many things that we
every
needed to
time we
fix.
went in.
And we would listen to people going through the exhibition. They're like, "What is this tiki thing? Oh my gosh, this is like a thing. Like, what's happening?" And by the end, when they'd get to the Tiki Oasis room where we had a video about Tiki Oasis, they were like, "Oh, honey, do you think we should go to this event? This is still happening." Like people really just like had no idea. They maybe had a little bit of some knowledge. Maybe they've gone to a tiki bar, or maybe they were older and they actually remember their parents like having luau's in their backyard. But by the end, like we sort of won everybody over for tiki, and that's it was just like, yep, that's how it goes. That's what tiki's all about.
Yeah, the exhibit was sort of chronological.
Yeah.
It started with, hey, here's some respect for indigenous cultures, and then here's what tiki is, and here's what it was in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Then it went Trader Vic's, and they had their room. Yeah, then it went into, the history of like the Bay Area. So,
Yeah.
Tiki Bob, Tiburon Tommy's, and other places.
Yeah.
And then at the end was 80s, 90s, just like, kind of a half a room, and contemporary artists and mug makers, a little quarter of a room, and then Tiki Oasis, the other half
Yeah.
of that room. And so I literally saw a couple, pretty young couple, maybe early 30s or late 20s, sitting down watching the Tiki Oasis video, and they were going, this is happening right now. Like these are the people that are into this right now. Look, this is like a new thing. Like people do this. They go to these parties, and this is one of those parties. And they were, like kind of discovering Tiki Oasis in real time, like going, oh wow,
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
That was the history, and now like people are still doing this. It was really funny,
Yeah.
enlightening, and like it warmed the cockles of my heart, because I could just see like the wheels turning in their head, thinking like,
I could be doing
maybe we could do
that.
that, Hey, maybe we should check that out.
And, I think we learned a lot about doing an exhibition. I mean, we had over 30 contributors. We had,
We
I
can't
think,
name them all right now, but we
no.
would love to.
And then we also had about 300 items in the exhibition, which their archivist was like, normally an exhibition maybe has 100 items, like you're cataloging 300. And,
More,
like
more. That's the Tiki way. More.
But I also want to say that although that was a lot, it was sort of like sparse. Like it didn't
Yeah.
seem like there was like this wall of tiki mugs. And we tried to
Yeah,
have
we
like
felt like
sort of
really
like one
felt
mug of each main artist today. And people would take a photo and they're like, there's hardly any mugs on this shelf, and like sort of complain about it. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, we're trying to be like a museum, you know,
Right.
how do
Yeah,
you balance
you
that?
wouldn't do it like your mug collection at your home where you
Yeah.
have like
Yeah.
literally
Yeah.
like all lined up, right? Like
Yeah.
we had some space in between each mug, and they're like, why didn't they fill it up? Like, why aren't there more mugs? There's so many more mug makers out there.
You can't please tiki people.
No.
It's
Yeah,
impossible.
yeah. And
It's like,
how could you capture like all of the mugs that are out there? You're
Mhm.
always going to be
Right.
short.
Yeah.
And we were able to work with some local organizations as well that like the
Historical
Tiburon
societies.
Society, like the Tiburon
Yeah, and the El
Society.
Cerrito,
You know,
so that was pretty cool
we
because
got to make some new relationships and connections to people and help to tell that story. I mean, it's sort of like, wow, that's a lot to have to try to tell people the whole history of like modern what is tiki, and what that's something we had to do all the time, in the past. Like we really had to like explain the history of tiki, and we're really like we don't have to do that anymore, right? People know what tiki is, right? Otto? Like, did you say?
well, we had to explain it in that exhibition
Yeah.
because tourists would come there, right? And just people from it was in Yountville, which is a little bit remote. It's a little bit outside of Napa. So um
And they had a lot of tourists. A
yeah,
lot
they
of
would get a
like
lot of tourists
from
there,
Europe
but
and
also maybe just
Asia. Yeah.
regular people from Napa would say, "Oh, let's go to the
So we did.
museum."
And we really did have to give a little bit of a description,
Mhm.
and that worked out well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we were on
You
the
didn't go to it, did you? You didn't go to the exhibition.
no, unfortunately not. Yeah.
That was the year we moved here to Maryland. So
Okay.
yeah,
A little bit far away.
it
Yeah.
was. Yeah.
So when we're talking about how people already at least have an understanding of tiki, we were talking about this a little bit before we hit record, and we were talking about this after we recorded for the previous episode about I think last time we talked, we had asked when did you feel a scene was coming together? You thought about it a little bit after, and you said when you didn't have to explain what tiki was. So I'd like you to maybe a lot or expand on that a little bit, but then I also want to tack on just saying you two have been doing events for over 30 years at this point and bringing people together.
Yeah.
I wanted to just ask in generalities, I mean, how have you seen things? I mean, we've talked about how we've seen things change, but where do you think we're going from here with the wider tiki scene, younger people, new artistic interpretations, and all of that? So just to tack a little extra on.
Yeah.
Well, to answer your first question, like, how is the tiki scene perceived now? And so what I had said to you is, oh, it's cool that nowadays you could have a new bar or maybe a feature on a new bartender, and the journalist, all they have to say is, this person makes tropical drinks, also known as tiki drinks, and then they just talk about the person. Or they say, hey, this new bar opened up, it's a tiki bar, and they're doing this and that. And they don't say, and tiki was this thing that started with Don the Beachcomber in 1934, and then had Trader Vic's, and it was big in the 60s with luau's. Back in the 90s and 2000s, every article had to explain what tiki was every single time. And so it was kind of funny because, like, eventually I was thinking, like, oh my God, that guy just looked at the other article that came out 5 or 10 years ago and kind of copied some of it, and it's like repeating it. And it's also like if you get a full page article on Tiki Oasis or on Tiki Art Now or something, they have to explain what this is. It takes up half of the space, and now it's so well known. So like the tiki revival and the neo tiki is no longer tied to the past in a way that you have to explain yourself, and the way that it's not its own thing. Now it's really truly its own thing. People don't have to explain it. And that's only happened over the last, I don't know, maybe 5 years or something. Like that's a new development. 10 years ago, they still would have been explaining what is tiki,
Yeah,
and where did it come from.
Mhm.
And so I think that's really cool. It just, I don't know when, there's no delineating line of when that happened, but it is that way now.
Hmm.
And speaking to like what does that mean in the future, right? Like now that it's defined in some way, I think that it makes it easier for people to be like come to Tiki Oasis and like sort of maybe make it their own. They get to sort of like not worry so much about the past or what's happened before, but like sort of figure out what interests them.
Yeah, they don't have to have a history lesson.
Yeah.
They could say, why is this? Where did it come from? And get a history lesson. But to come to Tiki Oasis, you don't need to like have a history lesson and read a book or something.
Mhm.
Hmm. Huh. Yeah, I'm thinking about this because when we were walking around Tiki Oasis, I mean, for us, younger couple, been in Tiki for a little while. I mean, we're talking to Sven Kirsten and sitting in his seminar as he's talking about his history. And he gave a seminar on writing the book of Tiki, but how he was solely focused on 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. And I think if anyone's been on a Facebook argument with Sven before, he is a very opinionated man, but we all love him. But then it's fun because we're sitting in line behind somebody who is our age, going like, we just got into this a few months ago. We don't know anything about this, but there's this room party. So it is that kind of the bridging of multiple generations, and people are getting into that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But before we end the interview here, we wanted to turn it over to you two. If there's anything else you'd like to share, any other bits of wisdom or events or anything else you two are up to. I know you're always busy, so just wanted to give you one last chance.
Well, we're still creating,
Yeah.
we're still coming up with ideas. We're,
Yeah, we're always talking about the
you know,
now and the
yeah,
new and what is the next thing gonna be.
yeah.
Like I mentioned, Tiki News anthology, and I had never done that. I never put that out because I felt like I think I'm still writing the last chapter of that. I think I'm still in the now. Maybe Tiki Oasis is the last chapter of that. I don't know, and so I've always felt like I'm not ready to, archive the past and document the past because I'm still, kind of living in the present, and I kind of still feel that way. But maybe I'll do a Tiki News archive now, like 30 years later. Maybe it's time. But yeah, we're always looking for the next thing, and like I DJ, and I'm not DJing the same music that I was 30 years ago. I mean, maybe some of it, maybe some Martin Denny or whatever. It's all old music, but for me, it's always new old music,
Evolving yeah,
and including some new music with the old music, so
yeah.
it's always something new, and I haven't hit a wall where I feel like, oh, okay, I'm done, I'm kind of doing the same old thing.
I think that if I were to pat ourselves on the back a little bit for a second here, like, I feel really proud of what we've created. For us, we wanted to create something that was about community and bringing people together. And this was not defined when we first started, and we first started doing events in the 1990s. And it is defined now, but that does allow us, it doesn't mean that we're not still creative and coming up with new ways to explore it. And, we're sort of like, it gives us actually freedom to like get to do maybe some different things, and we see that now there are events in other cities and other countries. There's other opportunities for people, and we love that. Like we're friends with many of the other producers, and we go to events like Huki Lao, or we go to Rory's event in Palm Springs.
Yes, two of them.
Oh yes, two of them. We go,
So
well,
we don't know
continue.
which one we go to.
But we love that the scene is growing. We're so excited when we see that there's new bands that are playing music that
Yeah.
is new and fresh.
And
that
those
works,
bands need those other events, to be able to play
Yeah.
on these other months, so
And-
we think it's great that there's other events,
and just the
Yeah.
artists and the artisans, the people that come to the marketplace and bring something different and new, and it gives us like it's not stagnant. We're
Mhm.
like we can keep going, we can keep creating. We are planning to still do this event, and we're adding other events as well. So we're just having fun with it, and just really it's good, so great to just be like have folks like you like ask us about the past, because it's like it's a reminder of like, wow, like it was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to make this happen. But it is impactful and it has been meaningful for people. And so it does feel like it's been worth it. There's a lot of sacrifices. Like Otto said, our family like vacation every year was going to Tiki Oasis. Like that's what our kids grew up with. Like they didn't go to
no Europe vacation.
Yeah, no European vacation for them. Or, it was just like you got to go to Tiki Oasis again. And they look at it and they're happy that they had that experience as well, I think. So,
I agree.
but we really, we did sacrifice a lot over the years, but I do think like in the end we did achieve creating something that's been like a really great community. And that's something that I think we're really proud of. And hopefully we'll continue to do that even with new folks that are joining.
Yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely. Well, thank you both again for joining us for the second part of this series, and we thank you for all that you've done over the last 30 years. And so we look forward to seeing you here soon in August for our second Tiki Oasis and yours.
All right. Yeah,
Awesome.
we look forward to seeing you too.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I'll give you a high five. Man.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks again.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you again for joining us on another episode of the Tiki Talk Show. This is episode number 21. We really appreciate you tuning in again and again. And thank you so much to Otto and Baby Doe for coming on. And thank you so much for everything that you've done. I mean, we've talked for a good couple hours by this point, hearing all of your stories over the last 30 some odd years. And you two are just sources of inspiration for us all. And year after year, we're all getting together again, seeing each other, sharing ideas, and living the passion that Tiki is, and events that you two have helped set up and maintain and grow year after year. So thank you so much for not only coming on, but for what you both do.
Absolutely. You can find Otto on Instagram at OttoVS, and Baby Doe is at XOXO Baby Doe. And be sure to check out the Tiki Oasis Instagram for photos, fun, excitement, and all the updates on what's to come.
Yeah, and make sure you check us out at the Tiki Talk Show on Instagram. You can also find us at Kona Cove _Home Tiki Bar for our Home Tiki Bar account. You can find us on email if you'd like to reach out to us at the Tiki Talk Show, all one word, at gmail.com. Or you can also find us on our website at thetikitalkshow.com, where we have a mailing list that you can join if you like. Just enter your email and we'll send you out some stuff, blog posts, news, all that type of fun stuff. But if you're doing anything interesting or unique in the tiki scene, make sure you reach out to us if you'd like to chat. We're always down to see what you guys are up to. And as we close out 2025, this is our second to last episode. So we really hope you tune in next in 2 weeks for another very special guest for a little belated Christmas gift to you from us.
Absolutely. It's the last one to finish out this year, 2025. I had a lot of fun on our next episode already.
Do we want to say it now?
No.
A little hint?
A little Christmas surprise.
All right, how about we drop a hint, though? He's the coolest guy ever. I don't know who anyone's thinking, but some of you are bound to get it right. There is a correct answer.
Okay.
All right, but it's been great talking to you all, and we hope to talk to you again soon. But until then...
Bye.